Shalom Aleichem. Today we're going to learn second part of our Kashrut series. First time we learned about how to keep kosher, what foods are kosher, how to separate between meat and milk. And today we're learning about how to fix problems in the kitchen if something becomes not kosher, how to kosher something. If you purchase a used utensil from a non-Jew, how do you make it kosher? If you move into an apartment where appliances have been used before, how do you kosher them? Or if you're visiting a hotel and you want to use the microwave or a stove, how do you do that? As well as we're going to learn how to dip your utensils in a mikveh, which utensils need mikveh, which don't, what to do if there is no mikveh available. Let's begin. As we mentioned last class, anything that is used with cold food doesn't become not kosher. It only may have surface residue, and as long as you wash it with soap, it's going to be fine. An example of it is refrigerator. Even if meat food spills inside the refrigerator or milk spills, the refrigerator still remains kosher. All you need to do is wash it with soap, and then you can put any kind of food there. Similarly, on a table that is used with plates, you don't put hot food on a table generally. Therefore, you can continue using your table both for meat and milk. Even if it's a table that was previously used for non-kosher food, you can continue using that table, again, because we don't put hot food on that table. Similarly, your counter, as long as you use your cutting board, you use your plates to keep food on, or pots, you don't put hot food on the counter directly, then your counter doesn't really need to be kosher. On Pesach, we are stringent, and in addition to washing the counter with soap, many people also pour boiling water on it. But halachically, it's not required unless you are planning to put hot food on your counter. Otherwise, just wash it with soap and it's good. Similarly, for your sink, you usually don't put hot food into your sink directly, and therefore you don't need to kosher sink. Just washing it with soap is enough. Again, for Pesach we are stringent, and many people pour boiling water onto the sink as well. But if someone didn't, the sink is kosher, again, because you are using it for dishes or for cold vegetables, to wash your fruits, vegetables, and therefore, as long as the surface of the sink is clean, the food stays kosher. Next, let's go to the stove and the oven. Now, they are used with hot foods, and therefore they do need to be koshered. And we have a rule: anything that is used with dry heat needs fire to kosher it, and anything that is used with hot water needs boiling water to kosher it. So, for example, stove is used with dry heat, both the oven and the stove top, and therefore we have to kosher it with fire. How do you do it? First, you remove all the residue from the stove, and then you put a small piece of aluminum foil on top of a burner, the grate, the black metal part. You turn the fire on the highest for 2 minutes, and it creates very strong heat underneath, burns everything. 2 minutes later, you can turn off the flame and move to the next burner, and then to the next and the next. Like this, one by one, you kosher all your burners. For your oven, if you have a self-cleaning oven, that's the best. the heat that it creates is above 700 degrees Fahrenheit, and the oven becomes kosher, and anything that's inside the oven becomes kosher as well. And the good part about it, that if you have a self-cleaning oven, you don't need to clean it before you run the self-cleaning cycle, because the heat is so strong it burns everything. So if you have any cast iron pots that you want to kosher, you can stick them into your oven while it's on a self-cleaning mode, and it will make them kosher. Or if you have any racks, any grates, any grill grates that you want to kosher, you can put them into the self-cleaning oven and it will come out kosher. If you don't have a self-cleaning oven, you can also kosher, but you need to clean it first. You have to remove any food residue that may have spilled on it, and therefore you have to wash it with detergent all around. And then you put it on the highest flame for 1 hour. Now, self-cleaning oven goes to 750 degrees, but regular oven can only go to 450. Some ovens go to 500. And because the temperature is not so high, we do need to clean it before. But after 1 hour on the highest, even such an oven becomes kosher and you can bake in it. What do you do if the oven is not kosher? Again, you are traveling or visiting someone and you want to use their oven. You need to wrap your food into aluminum foil. And once you wrap your food into aluminum foil, not your food, I mean your pan, you can put your own aluminum foil pan with its cover and then wrap it one more time. This is different than dairy and meat. Since dairy is kosher and meat is kosher, then just having its own cover is enough on the aluminum pan. However, if the oven is really not kosher, then you need an additional covering over the aluminum pan. And similarly, if you are visiting a place and it's not really your oven, you cannot kosher the stovetop, just designate one burner that you're going to use, turn the fire on the highest for a few minutes, and then you can put your pot on it. Now, let's go to the microwave. A microwave, if a person can afford to have two separate microwaves, meat and dairy, that is the preferred way, because it's very difficult to kosher microwave. Let's say you want to use it sometimes for meat, sometimes for dairy. It's not practical. It takes a long time to clean microwave, because as the food gets hot, it starts exploding, and the top of the microwave, the walls and the bottom all become dirty. And if you ever tried it, it takes a long time to clean all the surfaces of microwave to make it clean. But if it's only a one-time procedure, let's say you got a used microwave and you want to kosher it one time, you can do the following procedure, and that is wash all the surfaces of the microwave with soap and sponge, and wipe it well, dry it well, and then put a bowl of hot water in it, turn the microwave on for a few minutes and wait until the water boils and produces a lot of steam. And when the entire inside of the microwave is filled with steam, then your microwave is kosher for use. Now, if you only have one microwave and you designated it for, let's say, meat, and once in a while you want to warm up something dairy in it, then you can just wrap it one time in plastic like a plastic bag, and you can use the microwave temporarily. Similarly, if you are at a hotel or Airbnb and you want to use their microwave without kashering, you can put your plate into a plastic bag and you can warm it up in the microwave. Now, next is a toaster. As we mentioned in the last class, we don't kasher toasters. It's very hard to clean them, and they cannot produce the same temperature as an oven. Therefore, do not buy a used toaster. Do not use the same toaster for both meat and dairy. Again, if absolutely necessary, you can use the same trick as with a regular oven by wrapping your food in aluminum foil, and then you can put it in the oven. Again, if your toaster oven is meaty and you want to warm up something dairy, wrapping it one time is enough. But if your someone's toaster oven is completely not kosher, then you should wrap your food twice. Now, food processor, if you know that it was used only for vegetables, then it's fine, because vegetables are kosher. But if you know that it was used for non-kosher stuff, or it was used for dairy, now you want to use it for meat, it's not recommended, because food processors have a lot of parts and a lot of parts that one goes into another, or gaskets where parts connect and there's space between, and often dirt gets stuck and you can't wash it out. And therefore, unless you're absolutely sure that your food processor is clean, it's not recommended. And even if you're not using your food processor for hot things, but because you have actual residue there that's difficult to get rid of, it's not recommended to use. Now, let's go to utensils. Utensils we divide between metal utensils that are stainless steel or cast iron or pure aluminum, where there is no non-stick cover, just plain metal. Those you can kasher. Then we have utensils that are made of metal, but inside there is either ceramic or Teflon, or now they're coming up with many different names, different kind of non-stick surface. So those you have to be careful with, because under normal circumstances we don't kasher them, because that coating is not metal. That coating is either plastic like Teflon, or it's ceramic, which again we don't kasher. And therefore, if you do have non-stick pots and pans, be careful with them. Designate them either for meat or dairy, because once you use them you cannot switch. But if you have stainless steel or cast iron or aluminum pans, if you need to kasher them, you can kasher them by first washing them very well, that there shouldn't be any residue. Of course, there shouldn't be any stains, food stains, not on the inside and not on the outside. And we wait 24 hours from the last time it was used for hot food, and then you boil it. And there are two ways to boil a utensil. Either you find a big pot, you fill it with water and you boil it, and you dip smaller pot inside the larger pot. And the same procedure is for all the silverware, spoons, forks, knives. You can just drop them one by one into the big pot of boiling water, and similarly you drop the lids, the cover, pot covers also into the boiling water. This way the process is quick, and afterwards you either pull them out or you spill the hot water and then you fill in cold water and you're done. However, if you don't have a big enough pot into which you can put the pot that you want to kasher, then you would need to use the second way, and that is you take the actual pot that you want to kasher, again after washing it and after waiting 24 hours, and you fill it up with water all the way till the tip, and you boil the water. And as the water starts boiling, it will spill over. You can put the cover on just to help it boil faster, and as the water starts spilling out, it will kasher not only the pot but also the rim of the pot, the place where the lid goes, as the boiling water spills over the walls. And also make sure that you take the lid of the pot and you put it sideways into the pot as well, and you rotate it little by little and wait until the water boils. That is an important point. When you put a lot of utensils into a pot of boiling water, very often the temperature drops and boiling stops. So then you have to wait until boiling resumes, and only then the kashering process is finished. Now the custom is, when you take out utensils that you boiled from hot water, to rinse them in cold water. So usually people have a separate basin with cold water, and as they take out utensils from the boiling pot, they drop them into the cold water. However, that can only be done for pure metals. If you have a lid that has metal on the rim and a glass in the middle, you have to be careful, because if it's boiling hot and you drop it into cold water, it might crack. So don't do it for that. Also, just an advice, if you have non-stick cover pots, either Teflon or ceramic, and they're very hot, don't put them in cold water, because the ceramic or the Teflon might crack and will not be healthy anymore. So similar procedure, as I mentioned, is used for all utensils that are either stainless steel, aluminum, or cast iron. Just be careful with forks, because between the teeth of the fork there might be food stuck, and so you have to clean that as well. If you cannot clean it, you cannot reach it, you don't have a way to get to it, then you take the fork and you hold it above stove fire, so that the fire should burn out whatever food is stuck in there. Similarly, if you have a knife, sometimes a knife between the handle and the blade has stuff stuck in it, so you have to make sure that you scrape it over there, try to wash it well, and if necessary apply detergent to that place. And if you cannot get rid, and you see there is some residue there and you cannot get rid of it, for a few seconds place that spot over fire so that it burns that place. Of course, not to destroy the knife, but just to get to that spot. You can do the same if, for example, you have a blender, a handheld blender that has rotating things, and they have parts that connect. And sometimes food gets stuck between the two parts and you cannot get it out. So also take that part, hold it over the stove flame until the fire burns everything that's stuck between the two parts. Now, before we immerse a utensil that has been used, we have to make sure it is kasher. So let's say you buy a used utensil. Now you have to do two things to it. You have to kasher it and you have to immerse it in a mikveh. But kashering comes first. And even though you're bringing in this non-kosher utensil that wasn't in the mikveh into your home, into your kitchen, that's okay. Kasher it, whether through fire or boiling water, and only then bring it to a mikveh. Now, we've covered utensils that need boiling water. What about utensils that need fire? For example, if you use barbecue sticks, metal spits, those are used directly on the flame, and therefore just boiling them is not enough. If you have self-cleaning oven, you can take again the racks or the sticks from barbecue and put them in a self-cleaning oven and they will be cleaned. What if you don't have a self-cleaning oven, or you're traveling and you don't have oven around? So then another way to kasher them with fire is put a layer of fresh coal that is burning hot, place the sticks or the grate on the coals, and then cover them with another layer of coals that are also burning hot, and keep them there for a few seconds until the coals will heat up the sticks or the grates. And then you can use those sticks or grates for your barbecue. Okay, now again, if you have any questions, please write them down in the chat and I will address them at the end. Now let's go to the laws of immersing utensils in the mikveh. Even though the utensil is perfectly clean and kosher, we cannot use it for food until we immerse it in the mikveh. And the reason for it is because a Jewish household is considered holy. It's considered like a miniature Beit HaMikdash. And just like in Beit HaMikdash, both Kohanim and the utensils needed to be pure, needed to be immersed in the mikveh. Kohanim would immerse themselves in the mikveh every morning, and every utensil that was manufactured and brought to Beit HaMikdash, before it was used, it had to be immersed. And of course, if during use the utensil became impure, the utensil would have to be immersed in mikveh again. So before we use utensils in our kitchen in which we are going to cook food and serve food for our holy families, to feed our holy children, we want to prepare them for service to Hashem. Because when a Jew eats by his holy table, he turns the food into an offering and he turns his own body into the altar. Just like the offering to God in Beit HaMikdash was burnt and consumed in fire to Hashem, so too when we serve our kosher food on our table and then we eat it and we digest it, it's as if our bodily fire burns that food and we use that energy to serve Hashem. So because of that, before we use any utensils, we need to immerse them in the mikveh to sanctify them. However, there are some exceptions. These rules are only stated about metal and glass. Metal requires immersion in the mikveh according to Torah law, and glass requires immersion in the mikveh according to rabbinic law. That is because glass is similar to metal in that just like metal we can melt it and produce a new utensil, so too glass can melt and then we can produce new utensils. So the sages decreed that glass also requires immersion in the mikveh. Now, when we immerse something in the mikveh, we make a blessing. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al tevilat kelim. Some people make a differentiation, and if they immerse only one vessel, they say al tevilat keli, and if they immerse two or more utensils, they say al tevilat kelim with a mem at the end, which makes it plural. Some don't differentiate, and even if you immerse one utensil, you still say al tevilat kelim, because the blessing is a general blessing for everyone. Now, you say the blessing both for glass and for metal, even though glass is only rabbinic, but the blessing is said for that as well. However, there are some utensils that are questionable. For example, fine china, ceramic. Because some of fine china is glazed with glass, we have a custom to immerse fine china as well. And there's a question, should you say blessing or not? Whether the glass covering is significant, and also sometimes you don't know, was this porcelain glazed with glass or not? Sometimes it is glazed with glass, sometimes not. And therefore, if you're not sure, when you immerse your porcelain dishes, do not make a blessing. Similarly, if you immerse metal utensils that are covered with non-stick cover, like Teflon or ceramic, we immerse it, but we don't make a blessing. Now, what is included in metal? Of course, iron, from which stainless steel is made, and cast iron, aluminum, silver, brass, gold, and perhaps tin if you have such utensils. And what's included in glass? Any kind of glass, whether it's crystal, whether it's Pyrex, plain glass, colored glass, or Corel. The plates that are Corel company, they are also considered glass, even though they make them white or colorful, but the material that they are made out of is very similar to glass. Now, again, we make the blessing for metal and glass, but not non-stick metal and not porcelain. Now, if you are bringing a few utensils, some metal, some glass, some porcelain, so make the blessing on metal, like stainless steel, and that will cover everything, because one blessing covers all the utensils that you are going to bring to the mikveh. When you bring utensil to the mikveh, you have to make sure that the utensil can come into contact with water completely, which means the utensil has to be clean. There shouldn't be any residue on it, any stickers, any glue, or any paint on it. If you need, you should bring it home and prepare it, wash it well, remove all stickers from it, and only then bring it to the mikveh. That is for things that require immersion. Now, some things don't require immersion, and that is anything that's made out of plastic. Even if it's hard plastic, like melamine, does not require immersion. Anything that's made out of wood does not require immersion. Anything that's made out of silicon does not require immersion. Also, we have a rule that anything that is used only with raw, inedible food, like meat or raw fish, or only used with flour. Flour is inedible. These things don't need to be immersed. For example, if you have a knife that you only use for raw meat. You never use it for anything else. Or you have a cleaver or a hammer or an axe to break bones. You don't use it for any other food. Then you don't need to bring it to mikveh. If you have a metal sifter that you only use for flour, you don't need to bring it to mikveh. If you have a roller for dough and it's made out of metal, you don't need to bring it to a mikveh because dough is not edible. Another exception is anything that doesn't come into contact with food directly. For example, can opener. Can opener is not designed to come into contact with food, and therefore can opener doesn't need to go to mikveh. Or wine opener, corkscrew. It's only designed to take out the cork. It's not designed to touch wine, and therefore it doesn't need to go to mikveh. Or if you have a special cover for wine bottle, also doesn't touch wine, doesn't need to go to the mikveh. Now, what about disposable aluminum pans? For Ashkenazim, they're more lenient and they do not require disposable aluminum pans to go to mikveh unless you're planning to use them multiple times. If you're planning to use aluminum pans more than once, then it needs to go to mikveh, even according to Ashkenazim. But Sephardim are more strict and they say that since aluminum pans are sturdy enough to be used more than once, and the proof is that many people do use aluminum pans more than once, therefore even disposable aluminum pans should go to mikveh. However, since many people find it difficult to constantly go to the mikveh every time they buy aluminum pans, and they often buy them in bulk and they bring a whole box home, and then every time to go to mikveh, every time you want to use a new aluminum pan is difficult, so they can rely on the leniency to line the aluminum pan with parchment paper or aluminum foil so that food doesn't touch the pan itself, and then they can be lenient. Again, this is not ideal. Ideal, if you have an option, it is good to immerse it, but if you're stuck, you can use this. And someone might ask, if the aluminum pan is already made out of aluminum, how does it help to line it with aluminum foil? And the answer is because aluminum pan is a utensil. It has a shape, a definite shape. Whereas aluminum foil is just a plain sheet of aluminum, it's not considered a utensil. And therefore it doesn't need to be immersed. Now, if a person cannot, for some reason, go to a mikveh is not available, or it's close to Shabbat, or he is hosting guests, and something happened and his pot broke and he needs to use a new pot and the guests are already waiting. So what do you do if you cannot immerse? So number one, you have to remember that even though you are planning to use it only once, it's still not allowed. Some people are mistaken thinking that if I only using it once, it's okay. That rule is only for disposable pans and only if you use them one, and only for Ashkenazim. But for Sephardim, it doesn't apply at all. And even for Ashkenazim, it doesn't apply to real utensils. Therefore, we still have to find a solution. What do you do if mikveh is not available? And the only solution is to give the utensil as a gift to a non-Jew. And once a utensil belongs to a non-Jew, then we don't have a requirement to immerse it in the mikveh. So you can either go to your neighbor and say, I have a situation, we have a rule that before use we need to immerse our dishes in a body of water, and I didn't have a chance to do that. And the only way for me to use it is if it doesn't belong to me. Can I please give it to you as a gift? And then I will borrow it from you temporarily until I have a chance to bring it to Mikveh. And the non-Jew says, okay, I don't really understand, but fine, you want it to be mine, and then you want to use it. And he says, okay, and then you can use it. You don't have to hand it to the non-Jew, although it is recommended, and then he gives back. It's enough just to tell him, I have such and such item, and this is the issue. Do you mind if I give it to you as a gift? And then you allow me to borrow it. And if the non-Jew says, fine, then you can use it without immersion. But then when you have a chance to immerse, then you call the non-Jew and say, can you please give it back to me permanently? And then you bring it to Mikveh. Because if the utensil still belongs to the non-Jew, it doesn't help bring it to Mikveh because it doesn't need a Mikveh. So if you do use this method of gifting it to a non-Jew, and then you want to immerse it, first get it back from the non-Jew, take the possession, and only then immerse it. Now, what do you do if you bought, for example, pickles in a store? You used up the pickles and now you want to reuse the jar. Here again we have an argument between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, and here again Ashkenazim are more lenient, and they say that since the jar or a bottle that was produced at a factory and was filled with food was designed to be only used once, and then you recycle it and they break them, they melt them, and they make a new bottle, it's considered a temporary utensil. And when you decide to use it permanently, it's as if you give it new life, and it's as if you recreate the utensil. And therefore they allow jars and bottles from the store to be used again. But Sephardim are more strict, and they say that jars and bottles from canned food, after you use the food that you bought, you should bring the jar or the bottle to the mikveh. That makes life much harder for Sephardim if you want to reuse the bottle, but that's the halacha. Now, how do you immerse it? The utensil has to be completely underwater, and water has to touch every part of it. So that means a few things. Number one, the utensil cannot have any stickers, any glue, any dirt. Number two, you cannot be holding onto the utensil tightly. For example, you pick up a plate and you dip it. That doesn't count because you are still holding on and water cannot get in. What do? You take the plate, you put it underwater, and then you take your other hand and you hold it underwater and you let go. This way, the part that was dry until now becomes wet, and the part that was underwater is still underwater, because when you touch something underwater, between you and the utensil there is still moisture. Or what some people do is they take it in their hand, they bring it down, and then they play with it, they move it around in their fingers. This way the whole utensil gets immersed. Or the best way is to get a basket that has a lot of holes, and usually a mikveh would have such a basket. You immerse the basket in, and then you drop all your utensils, your knives, your forks, your cups, your plates in it gently, that they shouldn't break underwater. and once they're all immersed, you can just pick up the basket with all the utensils at once. Now, if you have a narrow-necked utensil, like a bottle or a teapot, you have to make sure that water goes inside of it, and therefore don't put it in upside down or sideways, because there will be bubbles, water bubbles inside. You have to first put it in, make sure the water goes into the entire utensil, and only then let go. Now, it's permissible to immerse a few utensils at once. However, if you have a few heavy plates, one on top of another, there's a concern that water might not get in, and therefore spoons and forks you can just throw a bunch in, but plates that are stacked, it's better to put them in one by one. But again, if you have a basket, it's very easy to immerse them, and it's very quick. Now, what if you have electric appliances? For example, an electric urn. If you have for example, a pizza maker or sandwich maker or a toaster for bread, what do you do then? So if the utensil does not have electronic parts, electronic as opposed to electric means that it has circuits or it has a display, if you put that in water, it will get ruined. But if it only has electric parts but not electronic, electric part means that it has a plug with electric wire, and it has the heating element inside of it, that is okay. It is safe to immerse an electric urn, a sandwich maker, or again a toaster for bread that doesn't have electronic parts, just a simple one, a pizza maker. All these things you can safely immerse. Thousands and thousands of people have done it and are doing it. All you need to do afterwards is just shake them out well, dry them for a day or two in a dry place, and then you can use them no problem. I have myself done it dozens of times for various appliances, and I never had an issue. If a person has a utensil that has electronic part, a display or some circuitry that may get damaged from water, or if a person is scared to immerse his electric utensils for whatever reason, then the only option for them is to give it to a non-Jew and then borrow it from them. Now, immersing in the mikveh can be done both during the day and during the night. It can be done both by women and men. However, it cannot be done on Shabbat or Yom Tov. And immersing has to be done by a Jew, not by a non-Jew, unless a Jew is standing there. The Jew made the blessing, he started the process, and then the non-Jew is doing it, but the Jew has to supervise, because we don't trust a non-Jew to do it. So you cannot give it to your workers and rely on them. You actually have to be there watching how they immerse every object. Therefore, it's not so practical. Similarly with a child, an adult should be the one immersing, but if a child wants to help, it's okay as long as an adult is watching. Now, let me go to the chat and answer questions on it. If you want to write more questions, you're welcome. the blessing is said right before immersing the utensils. If you already immerse the utensil and you don't have any other utensils to immerse, it's too late to make a blessing. The blessing has to be made before you immerse utensils. Do all stickers have to be removed? Yes, all the stickers have to be removed, both on the part that touches the food and on the underside, even though that doesn't touch the food, but all the stickers have to be removed. Now, if a person forgot to remove a sticker and he comes home after immersion and realizes that there is a sticker on the bottom, so here there are two rules. Number one, according to Ashkenazim, they require you to go back and re-immerse it. According to Sephardim, there's a difference. If the sticker is the kind that you don't care about, it's on the underside and nobody can see it, and you are planning to use the utensil anyway, even with the sticker on, then it's kosher. However, if you were planning to remove the sticker and you will not use the utensil with the sticker on, then the immersion is not valid. You have to remove the sticker and go back and immerse it again. Teapots that are made from metal or glass need to be immersed. If you have a ceramic teapot, plain earthenware teapot, it doesn't need to be immersed. Again, things that cannot be brought to a mikveh either because mikveh is not available or because the utensil is too big. Let's say you have a huge urn or any other big appliance, if you can think of, and it's just too heavy to carry, to transport, to immerse, you can give it to a non-Jew. Or if you have an appliance or a utensil that you're worried, if you immerse it in water, it will get damaged. Sometimes you may have hand-painted pieces that, let's say, the knife may have a handle that is very delicate, or you have a tray that has flowers on it and you're afraid that if you immerse it, the glue might come off. So then you can give it to a non-Jew as well. If you have electric appliances that you're scared to immerse, you can again give it to a non-Jew. After you immerse an item in the mikveh, you do not need to put it in cold water. That's only for koshering. If you boil something, then you take it out from boiling water and you put it in cold water. But if you immerse it, after you take it out, it's ready to be used. Now, there is a difference between koshering and immersing. And that is, we said that if you have a utensil that doesn't fit into the pot, the example we gave was a lid, you can put it partially and then rotate and put it partially to boil the other part. Or if you have a ladle, you can put one side in first, then the other side. But for mikveh, it doesn't work. For mikveh, you have to put the entire utensil inside the mikveh at the same time. It will not help if you put half of a utensil into the mikveh and then another half. That doesn't work. Now, at this time, if you have more questions, if you have questions about koshering, if you have questions about immersing in the mikveh, you may write it on the chat, or you can even ask by unmuting yourself. If you have any special cases of utensils that you need to kosher, or you have questions about immersion in the mikveh.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yes.
If I immerse a and then when I came back home, I realized the sticker was on the outside. I was okay with the sticker remaining there, so as not to make another trip. But over time, or with the use, after a while, maybe like months later, the sticker removes itself because of use.
Yes, that is okay. The question is, if you brought a utensil to the mikveh and then when you came home there was a sticker and you don't care about the sticker and you're planning to use the utensil with the sticker, the immersion is kosher. And then once the immersion is kosher, it doesn't matter what happens to the sticker. Meaning, you shouldn't be pulling off the sticker yourself because then you show that you care about it and then you are invalidating the immersion. But if you're using it as is and then in the process of washing the dishes, the sticker comes off, that is fine. Or if another person takes off the sticker, that is fine because you as the owner of the utensil, you didn't mind and therefore the sticker became part of the utensil. You were planning to use the utensil with the sticker and therefore the immersion is kosher. Ideally, we try to remove all stickers, even if you don't care about them. But after the fact, to save you another trip to the mikveh, we allow the utensil to be used if you don't care about the sticker.
Okay, thank you so much.
Now, one more point about it. If part of the utensil is made out of wood or plastic and part is made out of metal or glass, then the utensil needs immersion as well. And sometimes you have plastic spatulas or silicone ladles, and the handle is made out of metal. So such a thing would need an immersion, but without a blessing. And now just to go through some additional items, a peeler, vegetable peeler, needs to be immersed because even though sometimes it's used on potatoes which are not edible, but at the same time it's used on cucumbers and apples which are edible, and therefore peelers need to be immersed. There is a new thing on the market, and that is utensils that are produced by a Jewish company. You may find knives or peelers or teapots that are made by Jewish companies, and those usually have a sticker on the box that says it does not require tevilah, immersion. If you find such a utensil or appliance and the store that you bought it from is a Jewish store, that means it was manufactured under Jewish ownership and it was sold by a Jew, which means from beginning till end it was always in the ownership of the Jew, then it does not require tevilah, does not require immersion. Similarly, if you go to a Judaica store or a silver store, a Jewish-owned silver shop, and you buy handmade Kiddush cup, and you ask them, is it made by a Jew? And they say, yes, this Kiddush cup is made by a Jew. Then you don't need to immerse it. However, if it's not pure silver, rather it's manufactured in China, then even though it's a Kiddush cup, it still requires immersion in the mikveh. Any other questions?
I had a question. Does Amazing Savings count as like one of those Jewish stores that you buy your dishes from there, or no?
Yes, Amazing Savings is Jewish owned, so they do have some items that have a sticker that tevilah is not necessary. So if you buy, sometimes they have teapots, urns, sometimes they have peelers and knives that are made by a Jewish company. If it has a sticker that says in Hebrew or in English that this item does not require immersion or tevilah, then it doesn't need tevilah. But other things they sell still need tevilah because they're made in China.
And you said Kiddush cups that are made from what have to be immersed in a mikvah?
Kiddush cups that are not made by a Jew need to be immersed. So usually if it's pure silver, they're made by a Jew, but if it's silver plated or it's stainless steel or it's any other material, then it's usually manufactured in China by non-Jews, and then it does require immersion.
No matter what a Kiddush cup is made from, it has to be immersed.
Yes, unless it's plastic or earthenware, then it doesn't need to be immersed.
Okay, thank you.
And for Sephardim, there is one more leniency, and that is if you're using your utensils commercially, not for your family use, it does not require immersion. Ashkenazim are strict, and they require caterers and restaurants to immerse their dishes, but Sephardi restaurants and caterers are not required to do that. However, if it's your own home utensil that you sometimes make food for others for sale, since you sometimes use it for yourself, you do need to immerse it in the mikveh. Now, one last point. What is a kosher mikveh? A kosher mikveh is either what we normally call a mikveh, that is a pool of water that is connected to rainwater, that is made under supervision of rabbis, or it can be a natural body of water that is standing. But because it's often difficult to make sure is the body of water standing or not, for example, if it's a river that's flowing, that cannot be used as mikveh, or if it's a lake, but the lake has a river coming in and a river coming out, so we consider the whole lake as if it's moving. Therefore, we don't use lakes and rivers. But if you have ocean water or a sea, then that is a kosher mikveh. We need rainwater for the mikveh that is built. However, it's not enough to just fill up a bucket of rainwater, because there are two additional conditions. Not only it needs to be rainwater, but it also has to be in something that is permanently attached to the ground, and a utensil like a bucket is not attached to the ground. And number two, it needs to be certain amount of water, and that is 40 se'ah. It's approximately, let's say, 2 bathtubs of water. And therefore, a bucket of rainwater is just not enough water. And number two, bucket is not attached to the ground. Now, somebody is asking a question: can you use snow to immerse your utensils? And the answer is surprisingly yes, because snow is water, and snow is like rainwater. It's also natural water that comes from the sky. However, when you immerse something in snow, it has to be fully immersed. You can't just put something on top, or if you insert it and then there is a hole and the top part of the utensil is not, so you would have to pile the snow up onto the utensil. And then yes, that would be good. If you are somewhere in the winter and you don't have access to the mikveh, but you can put it in the snow, it's good. But again, snow needs to have certain volume, minimum volume. So if you have snow on the surface of the ground, then all that snow is connected and counted to fill that volume. But if you just have a patch of snow, that's not big enough. If there are any other questions, otherwise, thank you for joining. Have a good night and Shabbat Shalom.